All right. So Madison is our fourth president and our third president from Virginia. The not, he's going to pass or Congress will pass the Non-Intercourse Act, which is a modification really of the Embargo Act. What it says is we will trade with the rest of the world, but not with Britain and not with France. So this isn't really going to work either. It was, though, a bit better because it got some trade going, but it didn't work. So then we're going to pass Macon's Bill number 2. And this bill was an inside out non intercourse act, is what I like to call it. It says, hey, Britain, hey, France, listen up. Whichever one of you is nicer to us, we will trade with. And we won't trade with the other person. And Napoleon goes, ha ha, oui, oui, we will be très nice. But of course, Napoleon is a lying dog, and he is going to keep capturing our ships. I mean, this is a guy who's out to conquer the world, so it's really not going to bother him to break a trade agreement. The British are also going to keep taking from us, and by June of 1812, Madison is going to ask Congress to declare war on Great Britain, which is going to launch then the War of 1812. This is really considered the worst war in our history. This isn't referring to the death toll, but just the complete and utter disorganization and ill preparedness that we had going into the war. This vote was not unanimous. New England actually did not want to go to war at all because even though Britain was actually taking about a third of our ships, the other 2/3 were getting through and getting good prices. So the merchants, who were also mostly Federalists, are going to really resent this. Some trade is better than no trade at all. This also is going to be lacking a precipitating incident. So usually when you look at wars and you look at the success of wars in the United States, if it is virtually unanimous that the people are behind it, we tend to do well. But in this case, there was about a third of Congress that was up against the War of 1812. We didn't really have anything to make it stick. We had no precipitating incident. So basically what this means is that someone has to attack and kill a lot of Americans, and then we immediately go to war after that. A good precipitating incident will unite us. So an example would be Pearl Harbor or September 11th. And here we don't really have anything. We don't have anything that's going to unite the American people. The USS Chesapeake would have been a great precipitating incident, and we would have gone to war in that moment. But we were not ready. We really weren't that much more ready in 1812, but you know. So there was a real division about going to war by the people. The West is going to be represented by the Warhawks, Henry Clay, John Calhoun. But the ultimate thing that we are going to be fighting for was freedom of the seas. Americans are pretty bad and lousy with foreign policy because it requires two things that we don't have. One is patience, and the other is a long range view. We are really incapable of thinking ahead. But freedom of the seas is going to be one of our two consistent points of American foreign policy. These are going to be, this is, freedom of the seas is going to be one of the two consistent points since day one. The other is going to be the Monroe Doctrine. We're not going to get there this class, but in one or two classes. So, what is freedom of the seas? It is the right to trade with anybody, anywhere, at any time. Basically, it is the right to use the oceans that belong to no one, but these are going to be our sea routes. So if these are the open international waters, And you can't come pick on us in open international waters. And we care about this so much because our economic survival depended on it. Um, this is hard, though, to get the American people excited for. This is an intellectual concept, and we couldn't really think conceptually about this. So, part of our plan, no joke, was to actually conquer Canada. But one thing that we could not get into our heads was that the Canadians did not want to join us. They were happy being Canadians. Um, with our inept military leadership, the Canadians actually did attack the United States and captured Detroit, and they almost made it to Chicago. Apparently, the War of 1812 is a really big deal in the Canadian curriculum. The United States Army was not terribly strong. The rest is going to be done by militia. We were of the opinion that any man with a gun could fight. We also had a lot of jealousy among the different states, and on land, it is a miracle that we survived. The Navy, however, is going to do really well. Like I mentioned last class, some of the captains had gotten experience in the Barbary Pirate Wars, and that's going to give us some advantages of better captains, and our ships, although smaller, were better built. So as we go into the war, you should also note that there were a group of men called the Warhawks who were eager to expand and into Canada and to Indian lands, and this is also going to be then one of these primary factors to go to war. So I have a clip here, and I'd like you guys to click on it. I'll put the I'll be sure to get the push the link out to you. You have to scroll down a bit, but this is also highlighting how the fighting was going between the Indians and the Americans, and specifically focusing on Tecumseh.